There's a psychological phenomenon researchers call social invisibility, the quiet devastation that happens when a person exists in a room full of people, yet nobody truly sees them. Scientists have found it's not just emotionally painful, it's physically harmful. Loneliness, they say, is as damaging to the body as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But here's what nobody talks about. The cure has never required money, status, or even much time. It only requires one person willing to pay attention. This is a story about what happens when someone finally does. You know what I miss most? The old man's voice was soft, almost apologetic, as he settled into his usual corner table at Clover's Cafe. His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the newspaper, more ritual than reading these days. 28-year-old Maya paused mid-stride, coffee pot in hand, and something in his words cut straight through her practiced smile. She'd been waitressing here for 6 years, ever since her mother's medical bills had swallowed her college fund. And she'd learned, over hundreds of shifts and thousands of customers, to hear what people weren't actually saying. "Someone remembering how I take my coffee," the old man finished quietly. "2 sugars, no cream," Maya said gently, already pouring. "And you fold the sports section first, even though you always read the obituaries." Arthur Hollis looked up at her, his faded grey eyes suddenly bright with unshed tears. "You noticed." "Everyone deserves to be noticed, Mr. Hollis." That was 4 months ago. Since then, Arthur had become part of Maya's daily rhythm. Every morning at 7:15, he'd shuffle through the door. His cardigan slightly too large, his shoes carefully polished despite their age. He never ordered much: toast, scrambled eggs, coffee. But he always left a $5 tip on an $8 check. Maya learned his story the way you learn about weather, in pieces gradually, each fragment revealing something bigger than itself. His wife, Eleanor, had died 3 years prior. His daughter had relocated to Vancouver, too consumed by her own life for regular phone calls. His grandson visited once, maybe twice a year, always in a hurry, always glancing at his phone as though the present moment was an inconvenience. "I don't blame him," Arthur told her one morning, his voice steady but hollow. "People have lives. I'm just in between chapters now, waiting for the epilogue." Maya reached across the counter and squeezed his weathered hand. "Maybe you're just starting a new chapter, Mr. Hollis. Maybe it just hasn't been written yet." She began doing small things, saving him the newspaper before other customers could scatter it, keeping his corner table reserved during the morning rush. On his birthday, which he'd mentioned only once, in passing, weeks earlier, she brought him a slice of peach cobbler with a single candle pressed into the centre. Arthur wept openly and without shame. "You're the only one who remembered," he whispered. But Maya noticed other things too, things that worried her. How Arthur's hands shook more each week. How he sometimes forgot he'd already told her a story, beginning it again with the same opening line, the same distant look in his eyes. How he'd started walking with a cane. How his clothes hung looser each month. How his smile, once effortless, now seemed to cost him something. One Tuesday, he didn't come in. Maya felt his absence the way you feel a missing step in the dark, sudden, disorienting, slightly frightening. She found his address in an old community directory and visited after her shift. The house was small, meticulously tidy, and clearly far too large for one person. Arthur answered the door in his pajamas, looking embarrassed. "I fell," he admitted. "Nothing broken. Just tired. So very tired." Maya started coming by after work. She brought groceries, helped manage his prescriptions, read him the newspaper aloud when his eyes grew too strained. Her manager at the cafe complained about her shortened hours. But Maya couldn't stop, because she recognized something in Arthur's silence that she understood intimately. Loneliness had been her companion since her father disappeared from their lives, since her mother's illness had consumed everything that remained. "Why do you do this?" Arthur asked one evening, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't owe me anything." Maya adjusted his blanket, blinking back tears. "Because someone should. Because you matter. Because kindness isn't something we give when it's convenient. It's something we give because we're human. 3 weeks later, Arthur died peacefully in his sleep. Maya found out when the hospice nurse called. Arthur had listed her as his emergency contact. She stood in the cafe's back kitchen and cried for 20 minutes straight, mourning a man who had become family without either of them ever planning it, without either of them ever naming what it was. The funeral was small. Maya, the hospice nurse, 2 neighbours who had barely known him. Then, as the brief service ended, a man in an expensive suit rushed in, late, breathless, his phone still in his hand. "I'm Daniel Hollis," he announced, "Arthur's grandson. Where is everyone?" Maya stared at him, grief and something sharper swirling together inside her. "You're looking at everyone. We're all he had." Daniel's face flushed deep red. "I was busy. I had work. He died alone," Maya said quietly, her voice breaking at the edges, waiting for someone to remember he existed. Daniel left without another word. Maya assumed that was the end, a sad, inevitable conclusion to a quietly lonely life. But 2 weeks later, Daniel appeared at the cafe flanked by 2 attorneys. Maya's stomach dropped. She had heard stories about families emerging after deaths to dispute whatever small things lonely people left behind. "Miss Reeves," one attorney said formally, "we need to speak with you regarding Arthur Hollis's estate." Maya's hands trembled. "I don't want anything. I only wanted him to feel like he mattered." Daniel stepped forward, and she saw something she hadn't expected in his expression. Shame. Raw, unguarded, and deep. "My grandfather left you the house," he said. "But that's not why we're here." He paused, swallowing hard. "He also left me a letter. His attorney says it should be read with you present." They sat together in Arthur's old corner table. The attorney handed Daniel an envelope, yellowed at the edges, carefully sealed. Daniel's hands trembled as he read aloud. "Daniel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I don't blame you for being busy. Life is demanding, and I was just an old man. But I want you to know about Maya. She is a waitress who earns very little. She has nothing extra to give. And yet every single day, she gave me everything that actually mattered. Her time, her attention, her heart. She remembered my coffee. She remembered my birthday. She saw me when I had become invisible to everyone else, including you. I'm leaving her the house because she gave me something worth more than any property I own. She gave me dignity in my final chapter. Learn from her, Daniel. Success means nothing if you're too busy to love people. Wealth means nothing if you cannot remember how someone takes their coffee. Be better than I taught you to be. Be more like Maya." Daniel's face collapsed. Tears ran freely down his cheeks as he looked at Maya with an expression that held both devastation and gratitude. "I was so focused on building my career," he said, his voice cracking. "On making him proud through achievement, through success. I forgot to just be with him." Maya reached across the table, her own tears falling without apology. "He knew you loved him, Daniel. He just needed to feel it more often." "Teach me," Daniel whispered. "Teach me how to see people the way you saw him." Over the following months, something neither of them had anticipated quietly unfolded. Daniel began coming to the cafe regularly, not for business, not for efficiency, but to sit and listen. He learned the regulars' names and their stories, their preferences, their patterns. He reduced his working hours. He began volunteering at the senior community centre Arthur had often mentioned, but had been too proud to attend. "Too proud to admit I was lonely," Arthur had once told Maya, looking out the window. Maya and Daniel became friends, and then something more. Not a romance born from grief, but a partnership built from shared purpose. Together they converted Arthur's house into a gathering space for isolated elderly residents. Coffee, conversation and connection, free and open every morning. They named it Arthur's Corner. It became exactly what Arthur had always deserved, a place where no one was invisible, where names were remembered, where everyone's story was worth hearing. 1 year after Arthur's death, Maya stood at the community opening, looking around a room full of people who had been unseen until someone chose to look. Daniel stood beside her, holding her hand. "Do you think he knows?" Daniel asked softly. "That he changed everything?" Maya smiled through tears. "I think he always believed that one act of genuine kindness could change everything. He just needed someone to prove it to him first." An elderly woman crossed the room toward her, holding a coffee cup and smiling with quiet warmth. "Excuse me, dear. How do you take yours?" Maya's breath caught in her chest. "2 sugars. No cream." "I'll remember that," the woman said simply. Everyone deserves to be remembered. And in that moment, Maya understood what Arthur had been trying to show her from the very beginning. The thing that social scientists study and struggle to measure. The thing that no amount of success or wealth or achievement can replace. We are not here to be remembered by monuments or history or the balance of our accounts. We are here to be remembered by each other. In the small moments, in the daily rituals, in the quiet, powerful act of looking at another person and communicating, without a single word, you matter. You are not invisible. And I remember exactly how you take your coffee.